Hi, I'm Dana, and today we're doing another little video about my parents and my family, because one of the big things that prevented me from talking about this online for the longest time, and one of the things that I was really massively dealing with while processing that my parents actually weren't that great, and especially my mother actually wasn't all that nice to me and wasn't the perfect parent that I'd been convinced that she was, and I just felt so guilty. And it's something that comes up like semi-regularly again now that I'm making content about it, because I get the comments that are like, well, they weren't all bad, were they? They did this for you and they did that for you, and they like, no parent's all bad. I'm like, no, of course they weren't. Like, obviously not. No one is an entirely evil person. Everyone has a good side. Like, that's a fact of life. Nobody is the perfect evil abuser that we would like them to be to make everything easy. Of course, my parents were sometimes kind to me. I sometimes had nice times as a child. They just very much weren't regular and weren't often enough, and definitely don't excuse the other behaviour that I faced from my parents. And despite that, especially when I first went no contact with my mum, I spent so much time like crying and feeling terribly anxious and guilty because I've cut off this woman who is horrible to me and made me feel awful about myself and made me do things that I didn't really particularly want to do, and often just didn't give me any way out even when I was actively saying no to things. Like, we had a horrible relationship, and yet all of a sudden I'm feeling guilty because, oh well, she cooked my dinners when I was a little child. And it's like, yeah, and we'd be sat at the table for the next like 2 to 3 hours while she's telling me to eat something that makes me physically start retching and gagging if I put it in my mouth. And when that happens, she then goes, oh, stop making a show, stop forcing yourself to be sick, stop doing that, stop doing this. And like, yeah, I'm glad that my mother cooked me food. It would have been great if she'd cooked me food that I could eat and hadn't traumatised me by trying to force me to eat things that were making me literally throw up, and then acting like I was somehow just deciding to throw up horribly as a child. And that's very much how I got over it, and how I've learned to, like, not justify it, but that's how I've like processed it, to be like, well, that was abuse, that was neglect and abuse, and it wasn't kind and it wasn't nice and it wasn't how someone should treat a child, and whatever good or nice thing that she did beforehand doesn't negate that fact. And I'm not going to feel guilty over her doing the absolute base of what a parent should do badly, and often with like some sort of trauma following it. Like, she should have been doing better. That's not for me to feel guilty about. But the other side of that, and this was originally going to be two topics, but I think they actually go alongside each other very well, because the other side of that is that everybody adored my mum. Like, her friends, my friends, like kids, like anyone that my mum came into contact with more or less really fucking liked my mum. And it's one of those things where, like, of course they did. She wasn't the woman that I knew with them. Like, when I had friends come over as a kid, we could go into the living room or kitchen at any point and my mum would be there, and we could be like, I want a snack, I want a drink, I want a meal, I want this, I want that. And she'd be like, of course you can, don't you worry for a moment. And 15 minutes later we'd have this like big fruit plate with all the fruit like nicely cut up and cut into little stars and cut into little hearts, and all my friends would be like, oh my god, your mum's the best, you are living the most incredible life, this is brilliant, this is incredible. You know, like, I lived on the edge of a council estate. All of my friends were from like broken homes, like council estate kids. I was also one of them, but my parents thought that we were like really posh and fancy and middle class because we owned our own house on the edge of the council estate. And the show that my mother put on made it look like we were living the absolute fucking high life, because that was what she wanted. She wanted them to go back to their parents and be like, oh my god, Dana's mum did this and Dana's mum did that, and Dana's house is like this and Dana has this and Dana has that. Like, the impression that people had of us as a family and my mother as a person was that we had it fucking made, and we were like absolutely sorted, and we were the perfect family unit, and everyone was so happy and we had everything we wanted all the time. And it's one of those things where, like, when my friends were there, it's one of them where it wasn't exactly like got what I wanted, because it was normally them that was like, your mum does this and your mum does that, can we get this? And I'd be like, we can go and ask. Like, she's never in her life fucking done it when I'm on my own, but we can go and ask her. And all of a sudden I've got the most loving, like several of my friends nicknamed her Mrs. Weasley, because she just, that was the type that she was. Like, my friends would come to my house, my mum would give them a big hug and ask how they were and ask how school was. Do you need a snack? Do you need something to drink? Oh, go play with all the toys that Dana has. Do you want to watch a film? Do you want a snack while you watch the film? Like, she was this perfect, lovely fucking mother. And then my friend would go home and she'd be like, oh, you've made a mess with your friend, you need to clean that up right now. Go up to your room, I'm sick of hearing you today. You know, like, the mother that I had when friends were over and the mother that I had that other people saw and the woman that she was for other people did not fucking exist to me. For the majority of my childhood, my mum was in care roles with either with disabled adults or with disabled children, where she very much like, I would go to her workplace and actually fit in with the other children and play with them and have a nice time. And she would get annoyed by that because why can't you just make friends with the kids that are like you? Why can't you make friends at school? And like, I don't know, mother, why don't you explain to me why I'm only able to make friends with the autistic children that you work with in the special school? Why don't you explain that one to me? But that's, again, where the guilt comes in. Because, like, yeah, I didn't see it from her very often. Like, I did a few times. I have a few times where, like, especially as a very young child, I adored my mum, you know? Like, for everything that she did and everything, like, a lot of my childhood was me screaming and crying and being like, please don't. While she was like, just do the fucking thing. Like, you get the vibe. But the woman that I saw my mum present as like, as a person, you know, like the person that my mother was outside of being my mother, she was the most empathetic, kind person who was so aware of everyone's needs and really wanted to fulfill them for them and really wanted to make sure that everyone has what they need and everyone is happy and everyone is having a good time and everyone's being treated right. And she like deeply, deeply cared about that for everyone except me. Like there was a point where I'm not sure if she was, I think she was still doing care work, but the care place that she was working at was very nearby my school, so she had like the way the shifts were or whatever, it meant that she became a dinner lady at my school, and it meant that like I would get my tray and I would go along and all the people would like put the food on my tray and I'd get to my mum's and she'd be like, they've put loads on your tray, aren't they? You only need like 3 chips, there you go. And it's like, you've given every other child here a full scoop of chips. The guy there was this kid Liam that bullied the absolute fuck out of me in primary school. There were multiple times that like, there was a point where my mum made me pull down my pants, my trousers in the head teacher's office to show that I had these just like fuck off big dark bruises all over my thighs and arse because he'd realised he could like run up and jump and kick me, so that just became the thing that he did all day every day. So I was just covered in bruises from him doing that, and my mum would make me pull down my pants and show like, yeah, I've got these bruises all over me, like fuck. And as soon as she realised it had been Liam, this one kid that she really liked, she was like, oh well, he's just playing, Dana, you just need to tell him not to be so rough. And it's like, this boy in PE will follow me around just repeatedly bouncing a basketball off my head. Me telling him, be less rough please Liam, isn't going to help whatsoever. This kid absolutely physically and emotionally tormented me for years. My mother watched it happen. There would be times that she physically, straight up, watched him physically attack me in real life in front of her very eyes, and she'd give him an extra big scoop of chips and be like, oh Smiler, you have a good day now. She nicknamed him Smiler because he always smiled at her. And like, cool, okay then, fuck me. But it's incredibly difficult to relate the image of the woman that deprives me of like food that she considers to be unhealthy because I'm fat as a child. And it's like, who is feeding me, mother? The only food that I ate up until the age of 10 when we moved to Denmark and me and my dad had to start cooking together, the only food that I fucking ate was food that she'd either prepared for me or food that I was getting from the lunch line in school. That was the only food that I fucking ate. I didn't like eating at other people's houses. I didn't like the meals that they made. I was very fucking specific about my food. I only ate food that she fed me. If I was fat, it was her fucking fault. Like, I'm sorry, it was. And yet I was made to feel at like the age of like 6, 7, 8, 9, that it was my fault that I was fat and it was my fault for being bullied for being fat and I needed to eat less and figure out like my health and exercise routine as a literally like extremely young, small little child. And it was another one where if I had friends over and they were a little bit chubby too, I'd hear her talking to the parents and be like, oh, don't worry about it, it's just a bit of puppy fat, they'll grow out a bit. But when it was just me and her or just me and the family, like especially because my brothers were both like absolute stick insects, they were so skinny, they were so small, and then I was just the little fat girl and everyone was like, oh, just fucking stop eating so much. And like, again, also, maybe I fucking would have eaten less if I wasn't having hours spent at the dinner table every fucking night being forced to eat food that I didn't want to eat. Like, it's just such a strange situation that she created entirely on her own, you know? But trying to relate that picture that I had of the woman that was my mother with the picture of that everybody else in the world that knew her had of her as this person that would like never let a child go hungry, would never be mean to a child, would never like look at a child sobbing their fucking eyes out and be like, just go to your room and be quiet, will ya? I hope, man. And this is where we're going to briefly move on to my dad as well, because he died when I was 18, and that creates a whole like cycle of guilt when it comes to talking about things, because my dad very rarely did anything, quite frankly. So when I was very young, my dad also, he worked for like adult social care within social services, and he eventually left that because he didn't feel like he was able to like appropriately help people with the support that they needed, while also like ticking the boxes and doing what he was told and doing things the right way to like not get fired or in trouble. So he left that and started up his own business, where he did like hypnotherapy and Reiki and an array of alternative therapies. And that's something that I don't want to shit on, because he did have people who'd been victims of like quite serious things and who were like survivors of various things that felt very helped and supported by him. And he you know, he was in the paper and stuff for like having helped people go from like having survived this like horrible thing happening to them and not really knowing how to like go about life again, to feeling like a full person and having themselves back and being able to like go through life. You know, like he, again, like my mother, like really deeply cared about helping people and trying to provide people with like what they needed and the support they required, and just really going out of his way to try and help people. So as a very young child, I didn't really see much of my dad. He quite often got, like, he would be gone already when I woke up in the morning a lot of the time. I'd get up for school and he'd either be gone or going. Like, I would see him and wave and that would be that. And he quite often got home right as I was going to bed. So, like, it's one of those where I also, like, it's not necessarily guilt, but I do also, like, feel, like, empathy and understanding towards the fact that, like, my mother was working while also essentially having to live as a single mother because my dad's also in work all the fucking time. And I can't even begin to imagine how fucking stressful and overwhelming and, like, it's a whole situation that I would never, ever want, you know? Like, it's not for me. But that's the situation that she chose and put herself in. And just because it will have been really, really difficult doesn't mean that she gets to abuse and neglect her daughter, you know? Like, you chose that situation. And that's another one where I've had comments being like, from people being all, oh, she didn't choose that situation. All women in those days had to have children. I don't know how old you think I am, but I was born in 1997. Like, I'm aware that things have changed and it was a different time and all that, but she already had 2 boys that were 8 and 9 years older than me. She very much could have just not had another baby. She had a family that she very clearly preferred more than without me in it, you know? Like, she could have just not done that. I'd have been fine with it because I wouldn't have been born. So I do have this, like, you know, it's the whole, like, womanhood thing. Like, so many women are stuck in that situation and it's horrible and it's difficult and it's really fucking difficult, horrible. Like, I have so much empathy towards that. I still don't think it means you get to be fucking horrible to me when I was a literal child. So my dad would, like, get home from that job in the evening as I was going to bed, and it'd be another like, oh hi, give me a big hug, oh so nice to see you, and off I go to bed, and he does whatever he does in the evening. When he then transitioned to having his own business, that was when he moved out into having we'd built an extension room for my oldest brother because he like ate walls and shit, like he was a whole situation. So he had an extension room built out back, but then they hadn't fucking built it properly, so it was freezing cold out there all the time, and they were we can't make a child live in this situation. So that became my dad's office, and he was in there. Like, that was that. My dad was in there. We eventually had a shop in Wolstanton. I don't know, I've told you where it was, but again, like, we had it, it was like a double storefront shop, with one side being the shop and the other side being like my dad's office, and where he was doing hypnotherapy and doing the therapies and doing like training sessions for people that wanted to learn how to do it and all that kind of thing. So for my entire childhood, like near enough, I was in the same building as my dad. My dad was like a room or two away at most. Like, he was right there the entire time. And I just didn't fucking see him. Like, there was a point in my childhood where on the weekend he would drive out to a lake and we would walk partway around the lake. We had this one little like fishing area that we would sit in and watch the water and have a little chat, and I'd ask him stories about when he was younger, and he'd ask me how school was, and I'd be like, it's all fucking horrible, Dad, I literally hate everything, I'm so sad all of the time. And he'd be like, yeah, life's really hard, isn't it? And it's like, I'm 8 years old, please maybe like do something about that. That's the thing, I confided a lot in my dad, and he at the time like validated me nearly and made me feel better about it and would be like, yeah, that is really difficult. And it's like, okay, but I'm telling you, like, my mummy is bullying me, and you're like, oh, that is really hard. And he's like, you are in the next room while she is doing it. So it's one of those things where I have guilt towards saying anything bad about my dad or making my dad sound bad in videos or anything. And it's like, no, but literally you are my father. You should have been like looking out for me and protecting me. You were absolutely aware of these things going on, because like we would occasionally get to have dinners that my dad was at, and we were like, he was around, you know, like he was right there all the time for a long time. And I'll give that I don't think he ever saw like my mother's worst moments with me, but he saw enough to know that there weren't very many fucking like good or nice moments, and just went back to his office because he had other people to be nice to and care about and help sort their issues. So for both of my parents, from an outside perspective, I think they were lovely people. I think the effect that they had on the world, like for the most part, was a very positive one. They helped a lot of people, you know? Like in various different ways. My mum assisted children in learning. My mum like actively improved some people's like primary school experience. She helped people to like to live and thrive as adults. My dad did the same sort of thing. And like they were really good people until they came home and my dad just didn't pay any fucking attention to me, other than like, and like I say, like we had this period, it was probably a couple of months, like whenever I had any sort of like routine with one of my parents, like try and like build our relationship and have a nice time together, and they'd realise like, oh, we are meant to spend time with our child, it would last for like a few months, and then it'd slowly peter out, and I'd be like asking to do it and they'd be like, stop mithering me. And beyond that, like with my mother, even when we were having nice times, she so often ruined them, you know? Like when I look back on the trip that we had to Paris, a lot of that is my mum reminding me that it wasn't all about me, even though we were literally there for my birthday and they'd made it like a whole thing of like, this is just for you. As soon as we were in Paris and in Disneyland and stuff, no, this isn't all about you, stop being so selfish, stop asking for things, stop doing this, stop doing that. Like, my memories of my mother on that trip were mostly her being really annoyed at me, or her being like, no, I'm not going up the Eiffel Tower, it's too high up, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, why do you want to do it? And it's like, because you've brought me on a birthday trip to Paris where I've always wanted to go, like... Right, like, she also took me to Cardiff when I was 14 so that we could do the Doctor Who tour, and that's another one where I feel so guilty when I think back on that trip, because my mum saved up and took me to Cardiff on my Doctor Who trip, and it's like, yeah, and it should have been a lovely, really fun trip, and some moments were. There was the odd moment where my mum did seem like genuinely quite excited to be seeing this place that I'd like forced her to watch on TV all the time, and in between those moments she just seemed really fucking annoyed at me and really put out to be having to do this thing for me, and it's like, you could have just not fucking done it, you know? Like, I've asked, oh, can we go to Cardiff at some point? You could just say fucking no if you're going to ruin the trip anyway, which for a lot of it she did. You know, like, a lot of my memories of my mum are doing things that I've asked to do and I wanted to do, and her just being so fucking annoyed about having to do it that it wasn't even fucking fun anyway. But I still feel like a deep amount of guilt about that, because my mum did this lovely thing for me, you know? And it's also the other side of that, where like my parents were having a whole time by the time I was a teenager. My dad didn't come to Cardiff with us because he was still living in Denmark, where we'd just sort of like abandoned him when we were meant to be going on holiday back to the UK, and then my mum phoned him and we were like, we're not coming back. So he was not on that trip, but he did, like, I was 8 when we went to Disneyland, so he did go to Paris with us. And it was one of those things where, like, looking back, it disappoints me more than it did at the time. Because at the time, like, I'd have the moments where my mum really put me down, and she made, like, a lot of the moments that I had with my mum as a child were moments where I would be excited and I'd be having a good time, and then she'd have her little quip, she'd have a little sentence, and I would just go quiet. Like, I just, don't move your body, don't be excited, don't show anything, just don't have an emotion, and she won't have anything to say about us, so just don't. And my dad would see that, and he'd take me by the hand and be like, come on, we're going over here, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're getting you this. And it's like, okay, so like, I'm glad that you did that in the moment to try and like diffuse it and make it nicer. But also, I was 8 years old and she'd already been doing that to me for my entire life. And she did that up until like the argument that we had that made me stop talking to her was her ruining a fucking like dinner that I'd been getting ready for, and that made me a little bit late. It was a dinner at her house, like, you know? And I'm vegan, it's not like it's like, oh, you've got to keep the joint under the oven for me. Like, it really didn't need to be a thing. And that was my whole life. And it's like, so you saw that happening and you knew that it wasn't nice and that you needed to like make up for it, but you didn't think like that's happening all the time when you're not there to make up for it, and it shouldn't be happening or any of that. I haven't really mentioned my brothers through this, even though I said it would be about my family, because they just treated me a lot like my mum did. They saw that that was the way to treat me, that was the behaviour used towards me, so they did the same thing. And it's one of those things where like, I don't overly judge them for it. I do a little bit, because they're 8 and 9 years older than me, so like, a lot of the memories that I have are from between the ages of like 7 and 11. That's a lot of like the period that I'm talking about when I'm talking about like my family, because after that point we moved to Denmark and my brothers weren't there anymore. So when I was 8, they were 16 and 17, and they really, by the time I was 16 and 17, I was unpacking a whole bunch of shit for my family and really like reinventing the person that I was beyond the way that I'd been raised and all that kind of stuff. And I never saw them do that, you know. I knew them until they were in their 30s. I never saw them approach anything like that. So they both treated me very similarly to how my mum did, while also having like this sibling thing. So they thought it was perfectly okay to just like physically injure me. And so did my mum. She saw it happen. She saw evidence of it happening. She would hear me screaming. She would see me crying. She'd watch my brothers like bend my arm up my back and tell me they could break it if they wanted to, if I didn't do what they wanted me to do. All sorts of stuff like that. And she was just like, siblings, that's having older brothers for you, isn't it? You're just gonna have to learn to toughen up. And it's like, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter how tough I am. An 8-year-old girl is not going to be able to win a fight against a 16 or 17-year-old boy. Like, that's just not happening. And also, the odd times that I did fight back, I did it in the way that I was able to. So I would bite and scratch, because like, I'm an 8-year-old girl being like held in a headlock by a 16-year-old boy. I'm biting the fuck, I'm scratching, I'm digging my nails in. And then all of a sudden I'm getting grounded for 2 weeks because I've made my brother bleed. And it doesn't matter that I couldn't fucking breathe for a minute. Like, and even still, with all of that, there is a little bit of me that feels like genuinely guilty to share this kind of thing online and to talk about the way that my family treated me and to talk about the family dynamics and all of that. I feel like I'm like exposing my family. I feel almost like I'm lying. Like, even though I'm just sharing my experience and what I went through and everything, so much of it is things that I brought up to my family hoping we'd be able to talk through it and I'd be able to like process it and understand their perspective on things and be able to like repair the family unit and repair my relationship with them. And they would tell me, no, that didn't happen, or it didn't happen in that way, or it happened like this, or like it just straight up did not ever happen and you're making it up. So I so often feel like I am, and it's like, I remember it, the memory is in there, it happened to me, I'm sure, but I feel like I'm lying and making it up because that's exactly what they told me about that memory. And I have a whole thing caused by like a whole bunch of trauma where like I need the truth, I need honesty, I need like, it needs to be facts. And I don't often feel like I have that with any of my childhood, because I know that memory isn't perfect. I've had my memories repeatedly retold in different ways, or told that they didn't happen, and it's just been a whole big mindfuck with everything to do with my family that creates a lot of like very negative and guilty and just not good feelings. And it's one of those things where like I say, my dad died when I was 18. I stopped talking to my mum back in like 2022, so I've had a good amount of time to like process and sit with these things, and that's why I'm comfortable enough to make videos about them now. You know, like if I'd started doing this in like 2023, any negative comment would have had me in tears. I just wouldn't have been able to make this content before having processed it and worked through it a good bit. And now I feel like I'm in a place where doing this type of video is very, very beneficial to me. And when I get comments from people like relating and saying that they've had similar experiences and it's helpful, that means the world to me. I really deeply appreciate that. It can feel like my experience weren't just entirely useless, you know. It's not just I've been through these horrible things and now I have to sit with it and deal with it and try and feel better. They can also be helpful in some way for other people to hear. So I'm going to stop rambling now because this is actually getting kind of lengthy. As always, you can follow me here, you can like the video, you can subscribe. You can also find me over on TikTok, Instagram or Patreon. I am posting regularly on TikTok and I'm trying to post more shorts here, but I don't feel great about it. I also have a Ko-fi and a Patreon, and I'm trying to get my first month's rent together so that I can move out of this horrible situation I found myself in yet again into one that will hopefully be lovely and delightful and make me really happy. So if you want to help out towards that, I do have a Ko-fi and a Patreon, but there's no pressure, you don't have to. I'm not trying to like make anyone give me money. You can do whatever the fuck you want, it's all good. So yeah, that's that. I'm done talking. I'd love if you commented with any similar experiences you have, any advice that you have, any ways that you've like processed and dealt with this kind of thing, anything that you can think of that you would like to comment. I would love to read. So whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you have a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year. But this is washing. I'm not going to make him stop. I really want to just like show him to you, but I feel mean. Bye. I'll see you again in a couple of days.